Have you ever had a moment so strange, so wildly out of sync with the laws of reality, that for a second you truly wondered if you were dreaming, like the kind of dream where your feet stick to the floor and no one else seems to think anything's odd, even as the wallpaper melts and the moon starts playing banjo? I had one of those moments on a Tuesday afternoon, around 2:14 p.m. to be precise. And I remember the exact time because that's when my landline rang, and a 911 dispatcher with a weary but polite voice said, "Sir, I just need to confirm you're at 1314 Rosefield Way." "Yes," I told her. "That's me. My name's Charles Emery. I'm 68, a retired structural engineer. I'm a widower, and for the past couple of years, I've lived in a modest, single-story brick home in a quiet suburban cul-de-sac just outside Richmond, Virginia. The kind of place where the biggest drama should be someone forgetting to take in their trash bins by 7 p.m. But the dispatcher's voice. She wasn't calling about noise complaints or a wandering raccoon. She said, "We received a call from a Miss Beatrice Langford. She's standing at your address, claiming there's a housing dispute." Now, I don't know if you've ever had to process a sentence like that in real time, but it's a bit like trying to drink hot soup while someone's tickling your feet. I walked to the window, pulled back the curtain, and there she was, Beatrice Langford, standing on my lawn next to two large floral print suitcases and a round vintage hatbox like she'd stepped out of a train station in 1958. She wore a powder blue pantsuit, high-heeled pumps that sank slightly into my carefully edged zoysia grass, and an expression that could curdle milk. Beatrice lives 4 houses down. She's in her early 70s, a retired librarianer, so she tells everyone in the former HOA president of our neighborhood, Sycamore Hills. Not just a member, mind you, the kind of president who kept printed binders of the bylaws and used phrases like community standards in casual conversation. The dispatcher continued, her voice now edged with disbelief. "She claims that you offered her lodging and that the room provided is, quote, criminally inadequate for a woman of my refinement." Now, I don't consider myself a man who startles easily. I spent 40 years making sure bridges didn't fall down. I've weathered bureaucrats, concrete failures, and once, a senator who tried to cut costs by eliminating guardrails. But in that moment, I had no words. I muttered, "Ma'am, I've never offered this woman anything but a polite nod from across the street." I hadn't even spoken to Beatrice in over a year, not since she scolded me for installing a new mailbox that was, according to her, visually disruptive. It was black. The others are forest green. She taped a note to it that read, "Correct immediately." I didn't. I kept the black mailbox and began minding my business with surgical precision. That was, apparently, the second offense. The first, I later realized, was rejecting her casserole. I moved into Sycamore Hills in the spring of 2022. My wife, Eleanor, had passed the winter before, and the big house in the city had too many memories and too many stairs. I wanted quiet, a garden, a routine. The neighborhood seemed perfect, clean, orderly, mostly retired folks who spent their mornings walking dogs and their afternoons tending hedges. Beatrice knocked on my door during my second week. She didn't smile. She handed me a casserole tuna, I think, and said, "This is not a welcome. It's a primer. We have standards. Watering before 8 a.m. only. No lawn ornaments. And if you're using LED bulbs in your porch light, they must be warm white, not blue. It's in the guidelines." I thanked her. Later, I tossed the casserole. It was gluey, flavorless, and somehow both undercooked and dry. I cleaned the dish and returned it. That was, I now suspect, my first mistake. Over the next year, Beatrice escalated. Notes under my windshield about lawnmower decibels. Terse phone calls to the HOA board about the suspicious volume of my Amazon deliveries, most of which were books or birdseed. Then came the community whisper campaign. She told Mrs. Hughes that I was selling family heirlooms for cash. Told Mr. Randall I was hosting unregistered tenants. Told the lawn crew I was conducting soil experiments that might endanger the water table. I was, according to her, one poor life choice away from turning the neighborhood into a Superfund site. And I ignored her. Because I believe, deeply, in restraint. Because I thought if I gave her no fuel, she'd move on. But then, one day, I was chatting with my friend Calvin on the back patios, a retired lawyer with a beard like a snowdrift and a voice like jazz, and I mentioned that my daughter, Melissa, and her kids were flying in for a week. I said, Leo always wants the guest room, says it feels like a palace compared to their apartment. That was it. That was the spark. Because Beatrice, unbeknownst to me, had been standing on her patio 3 houses over, pruning hydrangeas and listening like a Cold War operative with a vendetta. She turned that one sentence into a fantasy, a verbal contract. In her mind, I was offering her, specifically a room. And not just any room. A suite. A royal suite. She began circling my house like a cat who's claimed a sunny spot on your sofa. Measured the dimensions of my porch with a sewing tape. Left a typed letter in my mailbox formally accepting the tenancy arrangement and offering, in lieu of rent, community oversight services. I documented everything. I installed cameras. I scanned every note. I created a folder labeled Langford on my desktop. Calvin watched the videos. He didn't laugh. He leaned back, eyes narrowed, and said, "Chuck, you don't need a restraining order. You need to build a psychological mousetrap." And so I did. I found her son, Mitchell Langford, an attorney at a white shoe firm in D.C. specializing in corporate liability. Polished, respected, and crucially still listed as her emergency contact in the county records. I composed an email. Not a rant. Not a threat. Just the facts. The video of her declaring on her patio that he offered it to me. The typed letter. The footage of her arriving with luggage. A tidy 3-minute highlight reel of the absurdity. I sent it. Then I waited. 26 hours later, my phone rang. "Mr. Emery," the voice said, tense and controlled. "This is Mitchell Langford. I saw everything. I don't know what to say, except I'm sorry. And I will fix this." 3 days later, on a gray Saturday morning, a dark blue sedan pulled into Beatrice's driveway. Mitchell stepped out. He wore a blazer, jeans, and a look of pure, weary resolve. A woman in her 50s follow-ethno uniform, but clearly medical. Psychiatric social worker, I guessed. They entered the house. No yelling. No dramatics. Just quiet, heavy minutes. Then the door opened. Beatrice emerged, not defiant, but deflated. A small overnight bag in one hand. Mitchell at her side. She got into the car. They drove away. And just like that, the neighborhood exhaled. The rumors stopped. The notes stopped. The silence returned soft and full, like snow settling on a roof. A week later, I got a call. "She's in a care facility," Mitchell said. "Getting help. Thank you, Mr. Emery. Not just for your patience, but for your precision." I didn't ask for details. I didn't need them. All I wanted was my garden, my books, and the comfort of a porch unoccupied by suitcases and delusions. Sometimes the best justice isn't loud. It doesn't come with sirens or courtrooms. Sometimes it's quiet, documented, delivered with logic and grace. The kind of justice that dismantles madness not with a hammer, but with a blueprint. I'm Charles Emery. I believe in facts, foundations, and the dignity of silence. And if you've ever had a neighbor who tried to rewrite reality, drop me a line in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. And remember, you don't always have to fight chaos with fire. Sometimes all you need is a well-built mousetrap.